Hi guys, so this is our first video, so a couple things before we get started. I only have a 15-minute window that I can make these videos in. Otherwise, I have to make a second video, period. Sometimes my dog will bark in the background. I apologize in advance. Second thing, if it's going too fast, hit pause and then replay it, that type of thing. You guys can understand that. So this section is section 1.6, and it's about compound inequalities, the difference between the words and or. And just really quickly, I want you to look at some no parking signs or some parking signs in general. So if there's these parking signs and this says no parking from 1 to 3, and we think about the words and or in terms of math, we're talking about something that looks like this on a number line where these lines right here refer to when you're allowed to park. Okay, the colored in section. So this is saying no parking between 1 and 3, which means you could park your car up till 12:59 and starting again at 3:01. But from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock, no way. Okay, so right here is the graph of that showing open circle from 1 to the left and open circle from 3 to the right. This type of notation that I'm kind of circling around right now is not exactly the type of notation we are going to use. We are going to use something called interval notation, and that is called set notation. Another quick example, this one says 1 hour parking, and it says 1 hour parking from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., meaning you would be allowed to park anytime between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. for an hour. So we would color in between 2 and 6, both of which would have closed dots on them, meaning 2 would be allowed, 6 would be allowed. Again, because we're talking about something between, anytime you have a between situation, between 2 points, then you can write it like this, which would be one compound inequality or one inequality altogether, which refers to an and situation. Okay, when you see something written like that, that would be an and situation. Likewise, if I go back one, this one right here would be an or situation. Okay, so we're going to go through some notes about solving compound inequalities. Compound inequalities are two inequalities that are joined by the words, you probably guessed it, the word and the word or the word or, either symbolically or verbally. So in symbols, we can show it's an and. In symbols, we can't really show it's an or. So you will always see the word or if it's an or problem. And is a toss-up. An and inequality represents what we call the union. Basically, it's like a marriage of two sets. Two sets have to join together in a way that both of their conditions are satisfied. Whereas an or inequality represents what we call the intersection of the two sets. And either of their conditions have to be met. So in the first situation, this union situation or an and situation, we always look for where they overlap one another. Whereas we don't have to do that so much when it's an or situation. However, because the two groups in an or situation sometimes don't touch each other, they don't connect continuously, we have to use a symbol that looks like a U, and we call that a union symbol. Okay, that joins the two groups. Interval notation is something that we're going to be using whenever we give our answers. Interval notation we're going to talk about in just a minute. So interval notation is a way to express solutions when you graph them on a number line. It's a way to use either brackets or parentheses. And when you use brackets, basically the square brackets, you use that to show that something is being included. What you would normally think of as a closed dot situation, kind of like what you have going on right here, that would be a bracket situation. As opposed to if they are parentheses. Parentheses are the graphical equivalent to an open dot. Okay, so similar to an open circle. So it says try to express the following solutions in interval notation. So because this first one is connected and it's all continuous, we can write this like normally I would think, okay, we would write it like 2 is less than or equal to x less than 6. That's the old way that we would go about writing it. We want to use what's called interval notation. I'm just going to abbreviate IN right here, whereas this one is what we call set notation. Interval notation, which is how we're going to answer ours, would be written with a bracket because this one shows that it's included or an equal to. And because it's connected, you just write one kind of looks like an ordered pair, but it's going to show brackets and parentheses to show us included versus excluded number. So the 6 is excluded, so we put a parenthesis on the right side, and the 2 is included, so we put a bracket on the left side. Now, the second one right here, because these two groups have this big giant gap right here and they don't connect, this is when you are going to use the big union symbol, okay, when the two graphs don't connect to one another. So if I'm writing a interval notation for this left side, I would say because the arrow points to the left, and you have to read it kind of like a book, you always go left side to right side, or in math terms, low number to high number. So we always ascend. So for my interval notation, this goes all the way to negative infinity. That's the far left side. And it comes all the way up here to 3, and then it stops with a closed dot, so I'm going to put a bracket. This right side starts back up at 6, but it's not included, so we put a parenthesis. And the comma represents where it goes to. So we know it's going to start at 6, and it ends at never. So we put another infinity, okay? One thing to point out, if it's on the left side with an arrow, it's a negative infinity. If it's on the right side with an arrow, that's a positive infinity because this goes in the positive direction, this goes in the negative direction, okay? So you think that you're almost done and you have the left side accounted for and you have the right side accounted for, but you have to show that both of these are answers that go together. So you put this little U in between them, okay? So that represents your answers. And remember, you would be reading it left side to right side. So there's two ways to solve a compound inequality. First of all, let me point out that the way that this is written, as you can see, two different inequality symbols right here, that shows you that the compound inequality, because there's two things connected, but it's automatically an and compound inequality when it's connected like that. So there are two ways you can do this, and we can only do this two different ways if there is only one variable and it's in the middle. And this way is pretty short and sweet, okay? You guys would normally solve something like this, you know, you add on both sides, but when you have this other one, it's almost like it breaks it into 3 columns. One, the middle, or the left, the middle, and the right, kind of like that. And so when I go to solve right here, and I look at getting my variable by itself, and I would add 2, I'll set that, well, I have to add 2 on the left, and I have to add 2 on the right, okay? And so what that does, and I normally don't write every single step out like this, so I get 12 is less than or equal, I have my 3y, and then I have my 21 on the right side. And then I'm going to divide by my 3, but again, I have to divide by the 3, it's a positive 3, divide by my 3, left, middle, and right. And so then my final answer is going to be 4 less than or equal to y less than 7. So the nice thing is it shows me low to high that my answers, the y, are between 4 and 7. Interval notation, though, would be 4, comma, 7 with parentheses. All right. The second way, and this way is something that you might want to get used to because you can do this every single time. I don't have to worry about, is there a variable only in the middle? So basically, you would split it up into 2 totally separate problems. The one would be 10 is less than or equal to 3y minus 2. And you have to account for the fact that this 3y minus 2 is in the middle. Okay, it's in both of them. And then you would put the word and then you would put a second part, which would be 3y minus 2 is less than 19. And then you solve both of them individually. So go ahead and pause it. I'm going to pause it and I'm going to solve each of them individually. Okay, so here's the issue. I've got both of these solved. Here's this first one. Y is greater than or equal to 4, or 4 is less than or equal to Y. Okay, notice it's on the bad side. So I'm going to graph that one in blue. The catch is, because this is an and situation, you can't directly graph an and onto the graph. You have to find out where they overlap. So I'm going to go up to 4 in blue. I'm going to put my closed dot above it, and this goes to the right, because remember it's on the bad side, so we have to go opposite. Now, for this other one, I'm going to do this one in purple, and it starts at 7, and it's open dot, and it goes less than, so it goes to the left. Now, you got to think, where are these suckers overlapping each other? So here's where they overlap each other, okay? That's the part right here that you need to put on the graph as your final answer. The graph, listen carefully. If it contains all three of these, I will mark it wrong. It can only contain the final answer graph, okay? The blue and the purple are there to help you find where they overlap. Now I can write my answer in interval notation, 4, 7, parenthesis and bracket, and I'm good to go. Okay? So hit pause, try this one on your own. Okay, so I showed both methods, and now I'm going to show you how to graph. Now I'm going to use method 2 for graphing because this is the one we probably need to get used to more commonly. So it's going to be open circle at 5 going to the right. This one is closed circle at 10 going less than to the left. Then I look for where do they overlap. Right here, I have to take the ends from both of them, and then I color it in. That leaves me with the answer parenthesis 5, 10, bracket for interval notation. Fours are pretty short and sweet. You basically have 2 problems to solve. And then you just put them on the graphs, and you don't have to worry about them overlapping so much, but there are special cases. So let's hit pause, solve each one individually, and then we'll come back and hit play after you do the solving. So I solved the first one. I got G is less than negative 9.5. So I'm going to put an open dot. Oops, not on the number line. Put my open dot on negative 9.5. I know we're estimating. And then I'm going to go to the left. And then I'm going to go down to negative 5. I'm going to put an open dot again at negative 5. And this one goes to the right. Writing my answer, again, left side to right side, I have negative infinity to negative 9.5. Open dot is a parenthesis. Union to close the gap, parenthesis, negative 5 to infinity. Okay, so everything that's in red right there, that is your final answer. As much as I don't want to, I only have less than 2 minutes left, and we have several problems. We might have to have like a short 5-minute second video. So go ahead and set this up. This one doesn't give you an option to do 2 problems because it's already separated. So you have to do first problem, basically second problem on this particular and one. Okay, so hit pause, solve these, and then hit play again. Okay, so I've solved both of these. For the first part, I got x greater than 0, which I graphed above the graph in blue. And then in purple, I got x greater than or equal to 3, and I graphed that one above as well. You can see it's an and. They both go in the same direction to the right. So if it's an and you're looking for the overlap, they overlap from 3 on to infinity. So your final answer is going to be 3, infinity, bracket on the left side, parenthesis on the right. Okay. Whenever it's an and they go in the same direction, your answer is going to be the smaller of the 2 sets. Set up solve number 2 for me. Hit pause. So I solved both of them, and you can see I got my answer x less than 4, which I graphed above, and then I had to make sure I flipped. I highlighted that when I divided by negative 2, and that gave me x greater than or equal to 3. The problem is those 2 things overlapped everything because ors you don't have to wait. So I need to erase both of those and actually go over it with no points left and Everything is my answer.